Hello everyone! Welcome to one more class of the English Submarine. Today we are going to study the past perfect. It's of the family of the perfect tenses, but this one is not as complicated as the present. Let's see it together, shall we? Alright, we have here an example so that you can picture how, in what situations we can use the past perfect. So, yesterday night is the setting of my story, okay? Everything happened in the past. It's the past perfect, of course. So, yesterday night at 8 p.m., my baby girl went to bed. And then at 9:30 p.m., I went to bed. I go to bed pretty early because I get up pretty early. So last night at 9:30, I went to bed. So imagine that this second sentence here is my starting point. This is where I begin telling my story. This is the reference for my beginning. So I say, when I went to bed last night, my baby girl had been asleep for an hour and a half. So, had been is my past perfect. So this is why we say that the past perfect is the past of the past. What do you mean, teacher? The past of the past? Yeah, that's it. I have here a timeline. All of this is the past. I've focused on the past because it's what we're studying. This is the present. And from this point on, we have the future. So we have two actions in the past. Action 1, action 2. Action 1 is more distant in the past. So action 1 is action 1 right here. Action 2 is closer to the present. So I put here action 2. It's closer to the present. It's closer to now. It's not as old as action number 1. So, when my starting point, when I begin telling my story by this action here, action number 2, I must use the past perfect in the action that is the past of this one. So this one here is the past, and this one here is the past of the past. Okay, that's the idea. This one here is more recent than this one. This one is older. Because if you pay attention to our timeline, it's going further and further in the past. It's not so close to the present. The one that's closer to the present, the most recent action, is simple past. The other one, past perfect. Now, I only use past perfect if I decide to begin telling my story by the most recent one, and then I talk about the other one. Because if I mention the events in chronological order, for example, yesterday my baby girl went to bed at 8 p.m. Then I went to bed at 9:30. Past, because it's a sequence of actions. So I use simple past for everything. The past perfect was used here because I started by the most recent action. And this is how we should use the past perfect. And now we are going to see the structure of the past perfect, how it works and what's the difference between this structure and the present perfect. You probably already know it because you could see here on the board, but now let's focus a little bit on it, shall we? I decided to keep the same example and make things easier for everyone. When I went to bed last night, my baby girl had been asleep for an hour and a half. So, the first thing we do is to locate the verbs of the sentence. Had been. Of course, we're just focusing on the past perfect sentence. The other one is simple past. We already discussed it, and I'll get the link here for you. We can go back there and check it out if it's necessary, okay? Had been is the past perfect. In the present perfect, we have the same structure with one difference. So not really the same structure, but a very similar one. The auxiliary verb, here I have had. In the present perfect, I have. Now the auxiliary verb is in the past. This is the only difference in the structures of present perfect and past perfect. This is it. We use had as the auxiliary verb. Now you don't need to make a difference anymore between the he, she, it, and I, you with a subject, because they're all the same. We don't make a difference between have and has anymore. Now it's had for everyone. So had is our auxiliary verb, and the main verb is in the past perfect form. Is in the past progressive form. Past perfect is the verb tense. So had been, okay? If you need a negative structure, you just have to add not to the auxiliary verb. So here we have hadn't been. Hadn't, as you know, is the junction of had, and not is the contraction. So this is the contracted form, okay? And this is the full form. If you need a question, an interrogative structure, all you have to do is to invert the order between the auxiliary verb and the subject. My baby girl is the subject of this sentence. So I put had before my baby girl, and then the rest of the sentence is the same. In this case, I inverted the order of the elements because in English we only use the interrogative structure once in a sentence with one question. So if I kept the when sentence in the beginning, I would use the did here and not the past perfect questions structure for questions. So I decided to invert, but it's just so you can see how we make a question in the past perfect. We use had, subject, and the main verb in the past participle. And this is it. This is the structure of the past perfect. This is how we use it. Now we are going to see in our material a little bit more about it, and we are going to contrast it with other verb tenses. We are going to contrast it with past simple and present perfect. So let's go. So this is the unit 15, the past perfect I had done. Section A. Study this example situation. So here we have a picture. In the first part of the picture, we have at 10:30, Paul is saying bye to some friends. And at 11, we have Sarah saying hi to the same friends, except by one on the bottom that is not there anymore. So this is the situation. Sarah went to a party last week. Paul went to the party too, but they didn't see each other. Paul left the party at 10:30 and Sarah arrived at 11 o'clock. So when Sarah arrived at the party, Paul wasn't there. He had gone home. Had gone is the past perfect simple. So for all subjects, all persons, I, we, they, you, he, she, it, we use had, and the main verb gone, seen, finished is the past participle. The past perfect simple is had plus past participle. All right? Sometimes we talk about something that happened in the past. For example, let's read together. Sarah arrived at the party. This is the starting point of the story. Then, if we want to talk about things that happened before this time, we use the past perfect had. Let's read together. When Sarah arrived at the party, Paul had already gone home. Some more examples. When we got home last night, we found that somebody had broken into the flat. Do you understand? To break into. It means to invade. And a flat is an apartment, okay? Karen didn't want to go to the cinema with us because she'd already seen the movie. At first, I thought I'd done the right thing, but I soon realized that I'd made a big mistake. And finally, the man sitting next to me on the plane was very nervous. He hadn't flown before, or he had never flown before. In the section B, we are going to compare the present perfect, have seen, and the past perfect, had seen. You can see that in the first timeline, the present perfect, you see the situation from the past to the present. Is the direction of the action. And in the past perfect timeline, the action is from the past to the past. So it's totally in the past. Let's intercalate one example in each of the columns so we can compare them well. Let's read them along together. Who is that woman? I've seen her before, but I can't remember where. I wasn't sure who she was. I'd seen her before, but I couldn't remember where. We aren't hungry. We've just had lunch. We weren't hungry. We just had lunch. The house is dirty. They haven't cleaned it for weeks. The house was dirty. They hadn't cleaned it for weeks. We can clearly see that in the first column, the actions are in the present, and in the second column, the actions are all in the past. In section C, let's compare the past simple, left, was, etc., and the past perfect, had left, had been, etc. Let's also intercalate our reading into one example in one column and one example in the other column so that we can have a better idea of the contrast between the two verb tenses. Was Tom there when you arrived? Yes, but he left soon afterwards. Was Tom there when you arrived? No, he had already left. In the first one, first I arrive and then Tom leaves. So we have a sequence of actions. This is why we do not use the past perfect. In the second question, in the second example, the moment when I arrive, which is the starting point, happens after Tom leaving. So he had already left before I arrived. Example 2. Kate wasn't at home when I phoned. She was at her mother's house. Kate has just got home when I phoned. She had been at her mother's house. In the first example, she wasn't home. She was at her mother's house. We are locating Kate here. Okay? This is the action that was totally in the past, and we don't have a sequence of actions. We have just one action here. She wasn't home. She was at her mother's. We have two different sentences, but they have the same idea. They mean the same situation. As for the second column, Kate has just got home when I phoned. She had been at her mother's house. She had been at her mother's house before she got home when I phoned. And this is the contrast that we have here between these two verb tenses. This is it for our unit 15. Okay, guys? So this is it, guys. Thank you so much for your attention, for your time. I hope you've learned. I hope you've enjoyed this class as much as I did preparing it for you and teaching it to you. If you have any doubt, you already know. Just leave a comment below and I'll get to you as soon as possible and I'll try to clear your doubt. Okay? Thank you very much. Share this video with your family and let's all learn English together. And I see you in the next class when we are going to learn the past perfect continuous. Okay? See you. Bye-bye.